This is the PR Podcast, a show about how public relations helps you tell your story to the world. We talk with great PR practitioners who have the skills, creativity, and just plain savvy to get their clients noticed. Now here's your host, Jody Fisher.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the PR Podcast. I'm Jody Fisher. Thanks for joining us. Well, have you got yourself a PR podcast plug yet? We mention this quite frequently at the top of the show. We like to plug other people. And I personally love saluting my friends and my colleagues and people out there who are just doing great stuff, right? So we created this PR podcast plug feature at the top of every episode. This is basically plugging other people, other PR people out there doing great things. So this is not your 9 to 5. It's your passion project. It is your blog. It's your website. It's your TikTok channel. It's your YouTube channel. It's, whatever you do that really gets your juices flowing and that you would do no matter what, right? And PR people, at least speaking for myself, really bad at promoting ourselves. We love promoting our clients, but we're sometimes really bad at promoting ourselves. So this is the easiest way that you can do it, is to send us a PR podcast plug and let us talk about your passion project at the top of an upcoming episode. Speaking of passion projects, I got to throw out there the PR podcast TikTok channel, and actually my own personal TikTok too. And I'm only saying this because I feel like TikTok is like for the youngins, and I'm not a youngin. And so, but I feel like I finally got my brain wrapped around TikTok, at least like at entry level here. So check out the PR podcast TikTok channel. Is it a channel? I don't even know what it is, but you know what I mean. Check us out there. Subscribe if you find it interesting. We promote episodes. We talk about some other things. And then over on my personal channel, we talk about PR tips and things like that. So check those out. Give us some feedback. Let us know if we're even doing TikTok right. And guide us through this new and interesting platform. Now, we have a terrific guest today, and this is Payback, and I'll get into that in just a minute. So let's get right into it. Debbie Elicksen is a writer, publicist, and female pioneer in the National Hockey League and Canadian football. As a sports reporter, she's interviewed more than 3,000 professional athletes and written thousands of articles for the Calgary Herald and other publications, including NBC Sports and the Associated Press. She has also, in her other life, helped authors publish more than 150 books for both self-published and on traditional platforms, including a few bestsellers. I bet there are more than a few. And she's personally written and published 16 of her own books. She's also the host of the Locker Room for Growth podcast, and that's what I meant, where I was a recent guest. And she is a regular contributor to the PR Lunch Hour on Twitter Spaces every Friday at noon Eastern. Debbie, welcome to the PR podcast.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you for having me.
You are very welcome. And like I said, thank you for having me on your show, Locker Room for Growth, recently. You actually posted it right. You posted faster than we post episodes of the PR podcast. And I thought I was turning things around. You had it online within minutes of us recording it. So that was impressive.
Digital media is my bailiwick.
Love it. Tell us about being a woman covering sports, and you've covered sports for decades, right? You go way back. So tell us what it was like in those early days of being a woman in the locker room covering sports.
Well, it was nerve-wracking. The first trip down was nerve-wracking. It took me a while to get my courage to go in and get interviews, because I was at that time, or at least at those games that I had attended, I was the only female. And this was in Edmonton during the Gretzky years. So we had the best team in the National Hockey League for years, 5 Stanley Cups, by the way. They were pretty awesome. They were very good at giving me the accreditation to go in. And the first time I had my first one-on-one, I didn't have the courage to go inside the locker room yet. So I waited for him outside. Well, this happened to be a player that was like the last guy to leave the room. So it was painfully long wait for him to come out. But he was so amazing and gave me all the time I needed to finish the interview. So the next time I just had to like suck it up and go in. And I think the first time I was in, they were challenging me, kind of like flashing their towels and whatnot as they walked by. I think my media colleagues were more nervous. And then once I did not react at all, I like looked bored. I must have passed the test because they just treated me like anyone else after that. So the National Hockey League was really great, at least in Edmonton, and then Calgary was pretty good too. So I think, and then by the time I got to Calgary, there was a couple more women sprinkled in. There's still like only 2 of us or 3 of us at all times, but there was more. And I have to say that my mentor and the person that I initially came into the league to work for, his wife is the reason all women are able to work in the National Hockey League, because she had to take the NHL and the New York Rangers to court and file a civil rights lawsuit against them to allow her access to the press box, let alone in the dressing room. So Shirley Fischler is our guiding light that opened that door.
And I wanted to ask that, and let's get into that a little bit more, because, you know, I say all of this as the proud father of a 10-year-old girl who plays baseball better than 90% of the boys she plays baseball against, and preparing myself to have the conversation when she gets to high school. You and I have talked about that. And sort of I guess the prejudices and the unfairness that are likely inflicted upon women who are covering sports, who are in the sports arena, which I've got to guess is still a pretty male chauvinistically dominated world.
Oh yeah.
And I wanted to know, you know, your experiences there and sort of how we make it better for women who are covering sports, you know, and in the locker rooms and in the press rooms and in the places where you're really covering sports, you know, from a journalistic perspective.
Well, I'm sure my female colleagues will attest to this, that you have to have a strong back, and there's no, like Tom Hanks says, there's no crying in baseball, there is no crying in media. You literally have to be rock solid. You have to have Teflon shield to let that crap fall off you and just do your thing. I mean, anybody who knows me, it's hard to push me around. I kind of have a bit of a mouth on me. So, and sometimes it gets me in trouble, but there have been times where it's come in handy, where I've come up with the response. I mean, even near the time. I mean, it's gone on for a while, and I'd say most of the players are pretty great. There's only really a couple that were terrible to work with, and I just never went back to them. You know, I remember going in one locker room. He's a pretty big star, and he's like, because he was a jerk to everybody, so it got to the point where nobody wanted to talk to him anymore. So I remember coming in the room one day, and he's literally standing there waiting for somebody to come talk to him. And I just looked at him. I looked him right in the eye, and I just went, you know, looked right away and just walked over to the next guy, because I thought, screw you. You know, you made it so difficult when I was assigned to actually get something from you. I ain't going back. So I don't need that pain in my life. So.
There you go. Well, I mean, that's how you handle bullies, right? In a broader sense, that's how you handle people who are.
And I've done that with some of my media colleagues that have done the same. I mean, there hasn't been very many of them, but there's been a couple that have been jerks, and I will call them out in front of everybody. I don't give a crap who is around. I will call them out in front of everybody, you know, and then walk away.
That's what you need to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So it didn't happen very often, but.
Were there any people who at any one point where you needed them to sort of came to your assistance or stood up for you to level the playing field and, you know, point out the fact that, you know, this is another journalist doing their job. Doesn't matter that she's a woman.
All of them, all my closest colleagues did that. Most of them were, a lot of them were freelance guys, radio guys, broadcast guys, pretty much most of them. They were all great. And just, it's only like, maybe I'm lucky because of where I was in the NHL, and then by the time, time goes on, you kind of get established more. But I mean, there was a few guys that came in and were total asses, but, some of them were called out. And I have to say, my mentor, who is the husband of Shirley Fischler, he also paved that way. He would stand and like, he never did not take an opportunity to praise the people that worked with him. And he did a lot of things. He got me a job with the NBC Sports, writing a weekly column, NHL column on their website. So, I've been pretty lucky, and that I've been able to work with some amazing athletes like Jerome McGinley and Theron Fleury. And there's just been so many great people that have been wonderful to me. And I don't forget,
No, right. Nobody forgets those people who went out of their way to help at whatever point and to whatever degree that we needed help. We never forget those people. What was your upbringing in terms of, how'd you get into sports? And how did you, I know you're Canadian, and in Canada, it's all about hockey. So I'm set on hockey. Tell me about sports and like what makes you such a sports fan?
Well, I hated sports. I hated playing sports. I was not really I didn't really have any. I was football first, the Canadian Football League. So I watched that a lot. My grandmother, and I watched some hockey games. My grandmother was a Dave Keon fan with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and she literally jumped up and down in a chair and cheer him on. But really, it wasn't until I was like 10 or 11 when I watched the Boston Bruins win that Stanley Cup, and I thought, that's my team. I love this game, and fell in love with it. And then I decided that if I'm going to work in the NHL, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to work in the NHL somehow. So I had that goal back then. But football was probably the first sport that I enjoyed watching. And then I ended up working at doing stuff in the Canadian Football League. Not Canadian, well, I was tied to the CFL, but mostly Canadian junior football is where I spent most of my time.
It's interesting to hear you describe it that way because, and again, I'm seeing this through my 10-year-old daughter's eyes. She is a Yankee fan, and to the point with Yankee baseball, and to the point where like she will sit down and watch a baseball game by herself if she needs to, because she's that she's that invested in it. And it is so great to see that light go off, whether it's sports or art or computers or anything, to see that light go off in a child and go, oh, this is my thing. I love this. And then to hear it, translate in your case into, sort of a life's passion that has become your career, has become, the thing that you do, is really interesting.
Well, I wanted to be a PR director, I think, back then, because I was keeping stats on every single hockey player in every single league that you can imagine. I had a piece of paper with a player's name on it and all their stats on it. And of course, there was no such thing as computers back there, so it was like a big stack.
That's a mighty stack, yeah. What do you think is the state of sports journalism right now, and maybe by extension professional sports right now? Depending on who you ask, it's the greatest thing ever, it's the worst thing ever. Where is all, because we don't talk a lot about sports journalism here on the show, and so I'm interested to tack into this area. Where's sports journalism right now in your mind?
Well, as far as quality, it actually, I can't even describe how it makes me feel to see, and the NFL has started this. Like they're the trendsetters in this. They're the first that I noticed that brought women on their anchor table at the NFL Network. And so, and now you pretty much turn on most sports channels or most sports talk shows, and there's at least one woman on there. And when you look in Twitter and see who's covering these leagues, there's a whole ton of women, and it just I cry when I think about it, because there was zero when I started out. Zero. I mean, some of them probably came right after me, but zero. Pam Oliver is one of my heroes, and because she's been one of the longest sideline reporters that I can recall. But it's, I think that today, sometimes I think it's better because there's more, but on the other hand, I think it's worse for them than it was for me sometimes. I mean, it was hard to open the door and get in. Don't get me wrong. There was no, you had no peer. You had nobody that you could, except a male, that would hold the door open for you. But today, I think, because there's so much vitriol in the world, I think they get harassed terribly. And I remember a news reporter that was murdered while doing her live piece. And it just makes you cry, because, and I've seen my media colleague, even some of the idiots they work with, actually it was similar, the same company that we've been talking about a lot, where they've been on the phone getting, they're getting direction from their boss to what kind of story they're supposed to come up with. And I don't like the way you changed your hair. I don't like, you're ineffable anymore. So it's, stuff like that. It's very crude, and that's from your boss, right? What do? You can't quit. So if the team itself, who gives you the accreditation, treats you like crap, you have no choice but to suck it up. The only time you can actually stand up for yourself is when it's, a player or a colleague or somebody like that. But there is a lot of vitriol now. I think that most of it's coming from the outside, where they're getting unrelentlessly trolled in Twitter and wherever they go. I mean, sometimes they get trolled, they're trying to do a live hit, and some jerk behind them is making it impossible. So you're seeing way too much of that lately, I think. And I don't know whether it's part of, I don't know if this is PG or not, whether it's small dick syndrome or what it is.
Right. I'm sure there's some of that in there for sure. People who
You
act
might want to
that way
edit that
probably are
out.
channeling the what do we call SDE? We'll leave it at that. But what needs to change, and who needs to stand up for women in sports reporting? Who I'm thinking of, the who can actually speak out and change this? Is it the bosses? Is it the league or the team owners? Is it the players? Who is it?
All of the above. I think that just respect. I mean, you can't preach, you can't force people to respect you as a human being. I mean, some people are not necessarily 100% great at their job, but I mean, that goes both ways. But I think that just respect as a fellow human being, I think that's something that is lacking in some respects. It not necessarily as colleagues or as bosses, but they do need to step up to stand behind their people, when they do get trolled. And I'd say that if your buddy, your best friend, or your son, or whatever, you catch them doing something that is despicable, like sending a dick pic or whatever to a girl, call them out. They say that's not, and they're going to argue and they're going to say, oh, mind your own business. But I mean, if the more people call them out, or if they get ostracized for doing those things more, maybe it'll change. I don't know. I really don't.
Yeah, I've got to imagine that it is a long road, as well as probably a fight that never ends. I mean, you
Yeah.
have to continually stand up to it. And there will always be, as you said, there's always going to be another jerk. There's always
Yeah.
going to be another somebody who is conducting themselves either, piggishly and accidentally, or intentionally and evilly. Is that a word?
And
And we
sometimes it's just
we just have to
misogyny,
rally
right?
around each other and call out that behavior, as you said. But also, I think this is just me, like sanctioning them too in some way,
Yeah.
like whether it's sitting a player for a game or fining them in some way,
Yeah,
or
that'll never
if it's
happen.
that won't happen, right? As you said, that's why I asked the question, like what do we have to do here?
Yeah. I have to tell you a story though from football that it still makes me laugh, because my first meeting as president of the Prairie Football Conference, and I was the first female president of a conference in Canada, or football conference in Canada. And so I remember being in the hospitality suite leading into the conference. And this guy, he was a newbie with one of the teams, and he's looking over, like disregarding me. He's like looking at this chick in the room. Who's this? Who's this broad? What's she doing here? Blah, blah, blah. Right. So he just totally dissed me. And it was so obvious that even some of the other guys in the hospitality suite were noticing it. So then we come down into the meeting room, and we're lined up getting a coffee or whatever. And this guy's beside me, and he's like, kind of like, what are you doing here? I says, oh, well, I just kind of like football. So then I go up and start chairing the meeting, and he literally lost. This face was, oh man, it keeps me going even today. And after that, he was literally suckholing to me big time, and I just totally ignored him.
There you go. There you go. Taste of your
The
own
power
medicine,
is
right?
good. Power and longevity help.
Yeah, poke them back a little bit. That's good. That's good stuff. Well, I want to pivot a little bit because you have a completely other career
Oh God, yeah.
beyond sports, and that is book publishing. And it's not a topic that we've talked about a lot either here on the PR podcast. So I wanted to talk about your career in book publishing. You are not only an author yourself, but you've also helped others.
Yeah.
Tell us about the world of book publishing.
Well, I don't do very much of it now, but except for my own books. But back in the day, I was basically the lap people dumped their manuscripts in to turn it into a book. And so I project managed the whole process, from editing the raw manuscript to getting the layout done and getting it printed and finding the best quotes, and get the ISBN number for them. I would get cataloging and print number for them, and basically do all that so that they would have a professionally published book in their hand, that something that they could be proud of and use. A lot of my clients were speakers, professional speakers and trainers, so they sold their books in the back of the room. I didn't meet half my clients in person, because back in that day, it was, I was a digital advocate back then. So I did everything through LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook, which is where I got most of my leads, is Facebook and LinkedIn. And so I worked on a whole bunch, and then I worked with an ad agency where I took those skills and transferred them to annual reports, and then project managed some annual reports, which is a little drier, especially when you're dealing with mostly oil and gas, because I live in Calgary. And But beautiful. I mean, the agency I worked with did beautiful annual reports, unbelievable, just the layout and everything. But she was so anal when it came to editing. Like, you literally had the millimeter on the ruler, measuring every single table and whatnot to make sure it's the same in every. It was really, really anal. So she taught me how to be a better editor too. And so I'm very picky with layout. So when it comes to traditional publishing, I kind of throw up when I look at their layouts. If, although I think some of them have gotten better, it's like, just in this, as an aside, there is no law that says you have to use Times New Roman. You can use other fonts.
Yeah. And if you look, there are many other fonts out there.
And
Some of them
please
just illustrate.
use other fonts.
Right. I'm an Arial guy personally, but that's
Yeah,
just
me too. Well,
um,
Arial, because I used to work with the Canadian National Institute for the Blind. Arial 14-point font was their norm because it's easy to read. You don't have to wonder if that's a G or a J. And yeah, I'm an Arial person too.
So what does it take to get the ball rolling on a book? I mean, that, they say that every journalist has a, or every PR person has a book in them. I don't know if that's the case
Yeah.
with me. I probably don't. I can barely get a tweet out. But does everyone have a book in them? And if you do have an idea for, wow, this actually could make something more than just a short story or whatever, where does someone get started writing a book?
Just do it. It's like anything else. Like, if you want to be a writer, you got to write. There's no degree that's going to help you in any of this stuff. You do not need sorry, Dad. You do not need a university degree to become a journalist. You do not need a university degree to become a writer and a publisher or a broadcaster. You just need a microphone, a pen, and a computer, and just do it. And the more you write, the better you get at it. So you got to start somewhere, even if it's a journal. I mean, hell, a tweet is writing, but edit what you put down. So edit your emails, edit your tweets, edit your, I don't know if you want to edit your journal, but you got to start somewhere. And if you're in PR, there's angles in PR that have not been written about that you could write a book about. There's personal stories, what's it like for a dad raising a girl and who's interested in sports, and she's getting all these jerks trying to close the door on her because she's a girl. Well, you could write about that. So there's a lot of things that people can write about if they just really shake the trees. But you've got to start somewhere, and you just got to write. You just open up the Word page, that scary empty Word document, and just, once you put the first couple of words on there, the rest flows out of your fingertips and it just kind of writes itself. But
I agree with that.
It might take
Yeah.
years to get that finger on that keyboard, right?
That's exactly right. Now, once you've got something going there and you say, okay, I need to take this to the next step, you have self-published and you have worked with publishers.
Yes.
Is there, I don't want to say a better route, that's a dumb question, but what are the differences?
You want to make money or not?
Okay, there you go. Go ahead.
If you want to make money, do it yourself. If you don't want to make money, get a publisher.
And so what are some of the pitfalls in self-publishing? Because it's probably not straight to the treasure chest, right?
Snakes. There's a lot of snakes out there that will, suck you in and chew you out just to steal your money. And then you don't own, like, if you pure self-publishing, and kudos to KDP and Amazon. They've improved their templates quite a bit. It costs $0 to publish a book on Amazon using KDP, $0. And they've improved their templates so that you can actually edit them pretty well. It's not perfect. It's not like I used to do my books, like when I was doing it for other people. But it's better than it used to be, and it's free, and you can instantly get it for sale on Amazon. I don't know what the print book looks like because I'm terrified to look at the ones that I've done. I don't want to know what they look like, but so far people haven't really complained. But and you make a decent royalty off of that, and you own your creative. When you traditionally publish, I've got 3 traditionally published books, and they're a partner with you, but they own your copyright. So it don't matter if it's 10, 20 years since that book was published. It doesn't matter if they haven't sold 1 copy. You do not own that book anymore because you signed it away when you gave it to the traditional publisher. And some of them will make you pay through the note. Some of them feel like they're not much better than a print on demand company where they make you pay not only for the service, but pay extra money just to get your creative files back. So that's why I prefer, like, if you're going to go POD, I would, because you control it and you own it, KDP Amazon, but also booklocker.com. I've also used them as a print on demand company. They're the only print on demand company I would recommend, because they also do not hold you hostage on your creative. So you own your own stuff, and then they do what they need to get your book out. But I'd say pure self-publishing is, to me, control is everything when it's your own creative. So, but I mean, it was interesting for me. My first book with a trad publisher was Self-Publishing 101.
A book about how to publish a book.
Yeah. So, but I guess,
well, somebody's got to write it, right, Deb?
Yeah. I think the only time you go, like some of these people who have been uber successful with their self-published books, I mean, there's many, I could list many of them, because the distribution got so crazy. Like when you're selling thousands of books a day, it's really hard to send those out. So if they're physical books, so that is when you might turn it over to a publishing company. And but just because you go through trad does not mean you get listed, you get in a bookstore. Because I've got a NHL colleague who is one of the top writers in the NHL. He had a book that was published, one of his many books that was published. He couldn't get it in a bookstore. The publisher wouldn't put it in a bookstore. I don't even know if they listed it in their catalog, but so obviously it didn't do well. But you still have to sell your own book. So I don't know. It's either way, you have to sell your own book. So I'd rather have control personally, but that's me.
Yeah, I think that's that probably, I mean, granted, never having published a book, it just sounds logical to me that the most important thing is the control over your original material more than anything else, because then you can do whatever you want to do with it whenever you decide.
And being with an agency for yourself, you've got creative at your fingertips. So you could just say, hey, guy, when you get your spare time, when you finish this project, what can you work on this layout for me?
There you go. When's the next book? Do you have a next book coming?
Yeah, I'm actually doing an anniversary book for Locker Room for Growth from the interviews for the first season. So, it was a year old in August 9th. So all the people that I interviewed up to August 9th, I'm going to do a feature on all of them in this next book. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. Fantastic. Well, this has been a great conversation, Deb. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all your knowledge, all your experience.
Thank you.
And on topics, like I said, that we haven't talked about here on the show before. So it's really great. We are going to segue now into the rapid fire question portion of our podcast. This is where we steal a page from inside the actor's studio, ask our guests a series of rapid fire questions meant to elicit a simple answer, maybe a laugh or two. I know we're going to get that out of you, Deb. So with your indulgence, here we go. Rapid fire question number 1. What is your favorite news source?
My news source now is YouTube. I go on YouTube and I have some of the news channels and some of the YouTube journalists. And I just kind of look at the recent clips to see if it's a story of interest. And then, so I kind of get my news and nuggets that way. And then of course, I don't know, I cannot go without Rachel Maddow. So because she's only on Monday nights now, I do met Rachel on Monday, but other than that, so MSNBC, I guess, from a Canadian perspective, I guess global, but basically those 2 channels, the rest of the news besides Rachel, I go on YouTube to see what's going on.
Sounds good. Sounds like a good source. Rapid fire question number 2. What's your favorite social media platform? I think I know that answer.
Well, I love Twitter. I'm a Twitteraholic. I was Facebook for a while because Facebook basically got me into all the other platforms. And it was a really great lead generator for me in the beginning. But I'd say Twitter, and I'm kind of loving TikTok.
Yeah, it's the new one. Like I said, I started to wrap my brain around it, and I like your channel as well. So urge everybody to check it out. Rapid fire question number 3, coffee or alcohol?
Both.
That's the right answer. Even though I don't drink anymore, that is still the right answer.
beer and scotch and vodka.
There you go. Very good. Very good. Rapid fire question number 4. What's your favorite on the run food?
Chocolate, I guess, and pastry.
Nice. Nice. Rapid fire question number 5. What do you want to be after you finish this career?
Do you ever finish a career in writing and PR?
Finally, somebody says it.
I mean, how can, unless I could not use my arms anymore and I have dementia, I guess that is the only time I would retire.
I'm with you. I am with you. Debbie, those are terrific answers. Maybe some of the best ones we've had on the show. So thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. Please let people know how they can find you online.
Okay. lockerroomforgrowth.com is probably the easiest if you know how to spell. And it's book publish with no ing, book publish 101 on Twitter. And then, but if you go on to if you Google lockerroomforgrowth.com, everything underneath, I've got all my social channels on the bottom footer.
There we go. So we know how to find you. All right. Well, thanks again, Debbie. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Please remember to subscribe to the show. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and TikTok at the PR Podcast. Send us a question or a comment there. Our intro is by Christopher Appold. You can find him and his fantastic photography on Instagram at Christopher_APPOLDT. Check him out there and hire him for all your photography needs. You can find me online at Jody Fisher on all the socials and on the web at jodyfisherpr.com. We'll see you next time on the PR Podcast.